When humanity finally pierced the veil of the Kuiper expanse and opened diplomatic contact with the United Federation of Sentient Civilizations, Earth's leaders saw it as a historic breakthrough. Politicians delivered speeches full of self-congratulation, diplomats polished their scripts, public agencies rushed to draft entire handbooks of interstellar policy, and bureaucrats printed thousands of interstellar regulations in anticipation of their glorious debut on the galactic stage. What they encountered was bemusement. First of all, United Federation of Sentient Civilizations was not a federation at all. That was an artifact of biased mistranslation, which implied a central authority that simply didn't exist. However, the convention that did exist was indeed ready to meet humanity. At the Grand Convergence Chamber, representatives from over 100 species regarded the human delegation with a mix of curiosity and mild horror. The humans, resplendent in their State Commission formalwear and flanked by armed UN guards in their blue berets, were met not with fanfare, but disquiet. Pulsating dismay from species that communicated with colors, pheromones, or the warbles of orbital frequency, who politely allowed the humans to finish their "we come in peace" speech. When dialogue finally began, it became clear both sides had made faulty assumptions about the other. "You still have governments?" asked Zik of the Olari congruence, its trioculars blinking slowly in disbelief. "You mean, institutions that monopolize aggression?" he asked, hoping this was another mistranslation. The highly trained human diplomat smiled awkwardly. "Yes, of course. It's how we maintain order and provide services." There was a long silence. The kind of silence only possible when dozens of civilizations, some of whom think in cycles and others in quantum harmonies, all find themselves equally dumbfounded. It was later explained, with the patience of a parent telling a child why one should not eat gravel, that none of the spacefaring civilizations maintained governments as Earth did. Not global governments, and certainly not national ones. The concept of a centralized monopoly on violence was seen as a primitive, pre-acceleration error. Something species went through, perhaps, before their philosophies developed enough. Only the societies that had embraced the ethic of non-aggression had managed to survive the gauntlet of interstellar expansion. The others, it turned out, stagnated under the weight of redistributionist bureaucracy or collapsed in internecine conflict. Civilizations with government invariably spent most of their energy on those governments, and usually having nothing to compare themselves to, would never truly appreciate how much it was holding them back. Evolution had quietly sorted them out, all of them, until now. And yet, the human ambassador responded carefully, trying not to sweat under the scrutiny of the Kelry Vapor delegates. "We made it." A gelatinous economist from the Mu Collective pulsed in amusement. "Ah, the exception. You made it despite your governments. You have among you exceptional individuals. Most were wasted, but a few, in spite of your acceptance of legalized aggression, were able to negotiate your bureaucracies enough to contribute their brilliance to your civilization." The revelation rippled through Earth's communication networks like a shockwave. Social media platforms, already straining under the weight of first contact, exploded with debates, manifestos, and memes. The hashtag #FreeGalaxy trended globally, with posts ranging from jubilant calls for dismantling state institutions to panicked op-eds warning of societal collapse. Libertarians, who in most places were on the peripheries of political discourse, found themselves suddenly mainstream, their arguments bolstered by the unimpeachable evidence of a galaxy full of thriving, stateless civilizations. In the halls of power, the reaction was less enthusiastic. Governments doubled down, issuing statements about the unique needs of human society and the dangers of reckless idealism. The governments of Earth, sensing threat to their legitimacy, began drafting contingency plans to safeguard global stability while massively increasing propaganda around unity and being one giant collective on one tiny planet. But the people were listening to a different tune. Anarchist forums and social media swelled with students, workers, investors, and even disillusioned bureaucrats who pored over hundreds of newly translated texts from across the Milky Way and marveled at the diversity of voluntary social structures. Back at the Convergence Chamber, Earth's delegation faced growing irrelevance. The most reputable galactic organizations, including the large trade alliances, research collectives, and interstellar forums, refused to deal with Earth's governments, not out of moral opposition, but out of risk management. Associating with coercive institutions could jeopardize their own standing in a galaxy where voluntary association was the norm and reputational capital was everything. Earth still managed very limited trade, but only with fringe actors and low-status networks, and these gray market operators, speculative miners, and backwater brokers had no real influence. Meanwhile, the people of Earth could now see other civilizations thriving with clean energy, very cheap costs of living and extended lifespans. It was common knowledge that those benefits weren't being denied to them by the galaxy, but by their own governments, who insisted on controlling all channels of exchange. The outrage was immediate. For many, it became clear, the only thing standing between them and a better future was the very institution claiming to represent them. Yet even as Earth's official channels were shut out, private connections were still being made. Those entrepreneurs, engineers, and thinkers praised by the Mu Collective as humanity's saving grace were individually invited into galactic networks. Through them, alien technologies began to flow back to Earth. Many of these innovations, from self-regulating energy systems to autonomous legal protocols, functioned without the need for centralized enforcement. Infrastructure once dependent on government oversight now ran independently, securely, and at a fraction of the cost. Each new tool that arrived didn't just make the logistics of governing harder, they also made the logic of governance harder to justify. As the cracks in Earth's old order widened, even progressive activists, once champions of state-driven welfare, began to question their assumptions. A viral speech by a young female Swedish parliamentarian crossing the aisle captured the zeitgeist, quote, "If the poorest in the galaxy live better than our richest, not because of authority but because of freedom and innovation, what are we defending?" The question hung in the air, unanswered by the politicians but answered emphatically by the growing exodus of talent and capital to off-world colonies that promised no taxes, no borders, and no chains. Each day, more of Earth's brightest minds slipped away, drawn to far-off places where they could build without permission. The flight of talent was like the Martian atmosphere bleeding into space, slow, steady, unstoppable. Libertarians didn't celebrate. They mourned. Now that the exceptional no longer needed to fight or fix the system, but could simply leave it behind, the question was no longer if, but rather, when, evolution would come for Earth, too.